The late legendary bell hooks said that canons secure institutions and institutions secure canons. When we only allow mainstream repertoire lists, like traditional syllabi, to dictate what we teach in piano lessons, we ensure a gender and racially biased narrative where the voices of women of color are not present. The music and names that we hear from early on in our musical training define what we want to play. Music resources shape what musicians teach and what students learn, perform, and listen to. In my research, I explore racial and gender bias in conservatory piano syllabi. Let's look at some data. We start with Conservatory Canada. In this graph, we see a steady increase in the inclusion of women composers. Women comprised 7.4% of the repertoire in 1967 and grew to 16% in 2018. Over 50 years, the rate of gender inclusion has more than doubled, but women only make up 16% of 20th and 21st century lists. In 1999, the first women of color are introduced to the piano syllabi through the music of Chi Hua Tan and Alexina Louis. This next graph displays the inclusion of women over the 50 years examined. Though the inclusion of women increases with each new edition of the piano syllabus, they only comprise 7.4% of 20th and 21st century repertoire over 50 years. Here we see the inclusion of music by BIPOC women over the progression of 50 years. Within that group of women, only 2 are women of color, and their inclusion went from 0 to 16 pieces over 50 years. We now move on to the Royal Conservatory of Music repertoire. The data shows an increase in the inclusion of music by women in the 20th and 21st century repertoire lists. In 1988, the first composition by a BIPOC woman was included, with 2 compositions by Alexina Louis making up 0.2% of the repertoire included in that list that year. By the final syllabus examined from 2015, BIPOC female composers make up 1.1% of total compositions included. This graph reports the percentage of inclusion of women over the years examined. Women make up only 3.4% of 20th and 21st century repertoire over the last 50 years. Here we see the increasing rate of inclusion of women. Looking at women overall in the 20th and 21st century repertoire lists and the increase of music by BIPOC women within that variable. Many students plan their musical year around music festivals and conservatory examinations. Conservatory exams qualify for high school credits, and the participation in festivals and exams can bring promises of scholarships for further music education. But the catch is that students must choose from the previously graded material put out by conservatories, which excludes female and BIPOC voices. I will now use the rest of my time to introduce several pedagogical pieces for the elementary to intermediate piano student composed by Black, Indigenous, and women of color. The preparatory level is the first official level within the graded curriculum system. Students learn preparatory music from method books and pre-level 1 repertoire. One piece at a preparatory level is Bright Eyes by American composer Florence Price. In Level 1 music, students learn elements of Baroque and Classical style in List A pieces. The character pieces are considered List B and encourage imagination and creativity through musical expression. Mariposas, meaning butterflies, is composed by Chilean composer and pianist Iris Sangueza. The Level 2 student strengthens their skills from Level 1. The additional skills include exploration and refinement of the damper pedal. Students learn to increase expression and balance of tone within List B pieces. Expressive titles are still present, but are less direct. Grade 3 moves away from the inventions as students demonstrate complete hand independence. In this grade, students learn irregular rhythms and pieces no longer remaining in simple time signatures. The piece I leveled is Klavierstück No. 7 by Boston bass composer Malika M. Fitzhugh. Billy's Song by American composer Valerie Capers is one of my studio's favorite pieces. The students love the rich jazz harmonies composed by Capers. Canoe on a Lake by Métis composer Karen Sinabaka. This piece is a palindrome mimicking the shape of a canoe. It begins and ends with rippling water sounds in the left hand. The Level 5 pianist continues to develop with intermediate repertoire. Students begin to play longer pieces, explore different musical forms, and fuller harmonic textures. Blue Flag Iris is composed by Algonquin composer Beverly McIver, who lives in the region of Ontario that I live in, on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. In my research, I found it exceedingly difficult to choose composers and pieces to feature, as there is a wealth of published circulating music by women of color. It is evident that women of color have and continue to make profound contributions to piano literature, both historically and presently.